Katie Raver is an NLP master trainer. I think you help folks through the lens of NLP. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, it is.
NLP is an acronym.
Yeah.
Not everybody knows what NLP is, so it's Neuro-Linguistic Programming.
Right.
Phil for you.
Yeah.
And just off the bat or at the beginning, I got a practitioner certification, and you're a master trainer, which is those are very different places.
Yeah.
And I've studied a little bit about NLP.
Yeah.
And you help folks like me that are on a pathway to mastery with that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you explain NLP to folks? Like what is?
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. Well, I'm excited that we're going to talk about your ability with rebounding or transitioning or resilience, because people will get to see an example of modeling using NLP. And a short form that I will sometimes use is NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Neuro is the brain and the body.
Mm-hmm.
Linguistic is the words I say to others and to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And programming is I can be intentional with my brain, body, and words to create different results for myself and others.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little short form like that.
And it's Bandler and Grindler. I always have trouble saying their names. The founders of NLP were Bandler and Grindler.
Grinder, yeah.
Grinder. Oh my goodness. They're going to take back my certificate. And it came about how long ago? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Some of like the history of just a little bit.
Okay. Well, let me turn the history a little bit on a 90-degree angle.
Mm-hmm.
So I came to NLP when I was a teenager. My mom helped start an NLP center in Dallas.
Okay.
And I would hang out in the back of the room as all the NLP greats like Steve Andreas and John Grinder and Robert Dilts and David Gordon would come through and teach. And there'd be 60 to 100 participants who were adults. Mm-hmm. And I'd be sulkily doing my homework or not doing anything as a teenager.
Oh, wow.
In the back of the room. And I didn't really know what they were doing. I didn't really participate in the classes, but I would go to lunch with my mom and her friends or hang out with them. And what I did know is that they were so exquisitely kind. They were amazing listeners. And a lot of adults don't pay attention to teenagers who are in the mix or who aren't into the topic that they're into. And that was never the case with my mom's friends and my mom too. They were always genuinely interested and caring towards me in a way that very few people were. So they stood out in that way. Mm-hmm. And later I would find out that that's a real marker of good NLP practitioners, is that they're curious about the world and they want to discover what's great about everyone. And they're tracking on when someone has an expansive experience, what's going on for that person. So that's kind of how I initially came to it. I didn't do anything with it. My mom practiced some exercises on me and my brother, but it was really about her practicing, not so much for us. And then in my early 20s, I realized that a scary thing that happened to me as a 5-year-old was influencing my daily life. I just realized I was acting from that trauma kind of all the time. So I looked for a therapist to work with. And I intentionally looked for an NLP practitioner because I had that experience with my mom of all these really nice people.
Yeah.
So I found one. Her name was Kathy Hansen. She was amazing. And she helped me with some classic NLP stuff. There's some processes that work with traumatic memories and also goals that she used. She also used EMDR. And it really helped me a lot. It really changed my experience of myself and how confident I was in the world. And she's the one who suggested that I take an NLP class. She's like, well, we're kind of done with what we're doing here, but you really seem like you like this stuff. Have you ever tried an NLP class just for your own personal development, your own self-discovery.
Yeah.
So that's really when I found Tom and Bobby Best. They were in San Antonio, and I drove down and met them. And immediately I knew this was just really fun to swim in the sea of consciousness and discover things about myself and other people that weren't always apparent on the surface. So I did that, and I had a friend in the middle of that class who was a lawyer in the Northeast in Connecticut. No, she was in Manhattan at the time. And during class, she called and said, I haven't been to work in 9 days. Every time I try to go to work, I have a panic attack. When I decide not to go to work, the panic attack goes away. Do you think they're related? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe. So she said, "Well, I have an appointment with a therapist, but I can't see them. They can't get me in for a week. Can you help me with NLP?" And I'm like, no, I don't know anything. I don't have a certificate even. All I have is my book. And she's like, you have to just try. So I literally cracked open my book and read the first exercise of the practitioner training to her and did it with her. She called me that night and she said, well, I had a panic attack, but I fell asleep in the middle. Is that all right? And I'm like, I don't know. I still don't know. I don't know anything. Yeah. So we did another exercise the next morning. She didn't have a panic attack, and we did the well-formed outcome frame the next day. And then she went to work and didn't have a panic attack. And she actually went in to work and resigned and said, I want to do this other kind of work. And she knew exactly what it was. I want to live in London. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'm resigning here. And they immediately said, we can't lose you. We need you. And we have an office in London. And we'd love to develop that line of work so that you can do that and be on a partner track.
Wow.
I know. So that's the moment I was like, oh, I have to really learn this stuff.
It had power.
Yeah. All I did was just the basics, the simplest stuff.
Yeah.
Even reading
You
from
read
the manual.
from the book. Yeah.
And it really helped. And I think there was something about the intention I had.
Yeah.
That I
And
really
probably the
wanted to
love
help.
for your friend.
Yeah,
There was
exactly.
a true connection there.
Yeah.
That probably a lot of NLP is building rapport.
Yes.
To have that affinity for the other person and to have
Yeah.
an intimacy there.
Yeah.
Shared goals.
Yes. Yes. And we can do, with that kind of rapport, we can do different kinds of work than we can just with a robot. So
They say, I heard a quote somewhere that said, in order to influence, you have to connect. That rapport building is the predecessor to influence and to really kind of, it has that safety or that trust.
Yeah. And I think influence too is about like the kind of influence that I'm interested in is about letting in someone else's worldview, their map of the world. Enough that they can understand where I'm coming from in the way that I communicate. So sometimes when we communicate, I'm speaking from my map of the world, and it doesn't necessarily land in a way that's meaningful to someone else.
Yes.
But when the kind of compassionate influence that I'm interested in is about letting in their worldview enough that I can communicate within that worldview in a way that they actually get what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think of the idea of the map not being the territory.
Yeah.
And sometimes the map that you have of the world benefits from merging with someone else's map of the world.
Yes, yes. And I think when I've really gotten into understanding other people's perspectives, it's kind of miraculous that we ever communicate anything because we're so vastly different. And I think that's wonderful and makes me really happy. So I came to NLP in this very pragmatic way and started using the exercises from the NLP practitioner training just with myself and my friends. I started the Austin NLP meetup shortly after that because I needed some people to practice that weren't my mom and her peers who were all, had been using this stuff for 10 years.
But you were in a family of NLP.
Yeah.
Right? You're kind of a legacy of NLP. How long ago was that? How long have you been doing it?
Oh, well, so I mean, I'm 47 now, and I was in the classrooms when I was 13.
Yeah.
So, but that was really
But
just
you started when
absorbing
you were
it.
20 something.
Yeah, yeah.
You started
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
practicing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So,
more than 20 years, 25 years, something.
yeah, a while.
But you were probably learning by osmosis in those classes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the way
really,
that they held space for you,
yes,
their attention.
sure. And when I started learning with Tom Best in my early 20s, I was still learning by osmosis because yes, there was the manual, there was the materials, but there was also Tom's, you could call it his mindset, but he could hold this compassionate space for people to change in that is rare. And I haven't seen a lot of people who can do that at his level. And also, when you're teaching at the front of the room, people give you all this adoration and power and faith that you totally don't deserve. And he was masterful at returning that 100% to the participants, which is where it belongs.
Yeah.
So it was really fun. It was very, very common that until like I would introduce him in front of a group of new students, they wouldn't know that he was the trainer because he would just be drinking coffee and visiting with people before class as if he were a peer. And that's how he saw himself. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love the idea of the power is in the teachings and the practices, not in the person.
Yes. Yes.
Everybody kind of being equal, because sometimes in a hierarchy structure, that hierarchy can make it difficult for the relating,
Yes.
for the connection and the rapport building, because there's this awe, and it also can create a power
Yes.
imbalance that I think is challenging
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, and the things that you're unconsciously presupposing when you're a learner and the teacher is a learner too are much more fun. They're about what can we learn from each other and how are we alike, instead of the hierarchical way, how are we different, or how is one person better? Those kinds of questions. And also, from if I'm a learner and my teacher is so elevated, then I feel like that's what they can do is unattainable. And that's not interesting to me in the classroom. In the classroom, I want us to play and be curious and explore and find some things that actually work in a new way together. So.
Yeah, you're wanting folks to have transformative experiences.
Yeah. 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 If that's what they want. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the history of NLP, what's interesting about it to me is that it's about the early developers of NLP looking at people who are great at something, discovering that, figuring out what's really important about that, and also, the people who have forwarded the field are remarkable humans.
It still, NLP is it's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think it's taken some hits
here
and there from different activity or behavior being associated with sales.
Oh,
being associated with pickup artists.
Yeah.
But it's still there trucking. It's still going. And there's new insights and there's new life in it currently, right?
Yeah. And when people are exploring if they want to take an NLP class, I tell them to follow their gut and find trainers that they really like, because the trainer themselves, it makes a huge difference with NLP.
Yeah.
With the quality, but also the quality as far as is it good or not, but the quality as far as is this compassionate and loving? Does this match my other values or not? And it's really easy for people to tell. So, I always advise them, like any kind of hard sell stuff, like you can buy this whole training for 90% off if you buy it before you come to class. Just let that stuff go, find the people who are doing the work in an ethical way, who have an introduction class where you can afford it and be in the room with them.
Learn.
And then find out
their bedside manner. Get a sense of how they hold space.
Yeah. And if you like that, then learn from them.
It's probably similar to a therapist.
Hopefully.
Right? Me personally, I'll sometimes meet 4 or 5, 6 therapists before I find one that has that I like their vibe. I like even the way they set up their room, their office. There's some things like when you came into my room, you said, "Oh, I see a lot of things that are similar to my home." The feathers and the sage and the cards and the Buddhas and the books.
Yeah.
And I imagine that you felt a little comfortable.
Sure.
Comfort or some familiarity in those things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I encourage people to pay attention to all that stuff.
Heck yeah.
So, yeah. And there's a lot of new work that's happening from people who know NLP. They may or may not fly the flag of NLP, but they have that mindset and the practitioner or master practitioner kind of certifications. And that work is fascinating. It's beautiful and wonderful. One of my favorite early developers, her latest work, Connie Ray Andreas, is called The Wholeness Process. This is amazing work that integrates multiple fields, and she's such a masterful training designer and process designer. I love learning from her. And, she's been there since the beginning and is still developing new stuff. And I love that. I love that about the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's someone who is coming to mind. There was a guy who does a bunch of finance stuff. What's his name? He's really tall. He went through he quit in the middle of the master's program, and now he has a huge business doing, what is his? I'll think of it in a second.
Okay.
You would know him.
Okay.
He's huge.
Cool.
He does big conferences where people come and pays him millions of dollars to be their coach.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Well, and I think the reason why there's like NLP mentions in so many different fields, some of them really fun and expansive, some of them not so, is because NLP is interested in the structure, the model of how things work.
And then you can take that model
to anything. Yeah. And so I think good NLP teaching is ethical and mostly neutral.
Yeah.
So that it's about, okay, anyone can work with these principles in an ethical way and in a helpful way.
And it's kind of old school DIY. Like, do it yourself. You think it's self-help.
Yes.
But you can go out and buy a source book.
Yeah.
Or you can buy these manuals. You can learn a lot of information's out there about NLP, and you can practice it. You can try it on.
Yeah.
Or you can go to workshops. You can go find therapists or what you would call them, folks that you
coaches.
Coaches you work one-on-one with.
Yeah.
And you can apply it to whatever you want to apply it to.
Sure. Yeah. And I think it really helps, I really came to NLP through workshops, so that's always a lens I'm going to see. I'm going to see the benefits there.
Workshops.
And some people can learn it from books. Some people really can. Some people can't. What we do with an NLP process is I show a demonstration with somebody from the class at the front of the room.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically an attention experiment that I'm guiding someone else through. And when people see that and then get to do the exercise right away with directions, they pick up all these unconscious things that I'm doing, and it's much easier for them to get the results that I'm getting when they practice it right away. And they get to practice it as a guide and a client. Yeah. Both positions are really important. So, and they see it as an observer.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Because I've done a lot of different frameworks or modalities, whether it's, men's work or NLP or radical honesty or a lot of these kind of healing modalities. But one part of all of them has been transformational experiences.
Yeah.
And I imagine in these workshops, there is moments where you go, aha.
Yes.
This makes sense to me.
Yes.
Whether it's you feel tingle in your body or you feel like this sounds true.
Yeah.
Or this works.
Yeah.
And that's easier to have in a group setting than it would be reading a book.
Yes.
Because you've got
most people,
real world application.
Yes. And two, I think part of it is being with other people interested in transformation.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Part of it is also you're learning these processes in a well-designed way. So the one where there's transformation or the aha moment, sometimes that wouldn't be possible without the other things where you were practicing different states of attention first.
Okay.
So I heard that there are these Buddhist tapestries that show a way to a particular state of enlightenment. So the state of enlightenment is in the middle, and then the map of the other states.
Oh yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's the cycle of birth and death, and going you either go up it or you go down it. I
Okay.
forget what those are. It's called, but yes,
Yeah.
you either go to enlightenment or you go to the other
Suffering.
realms. Yeah.
Something that's a bummer. Yeah.
The cycle of death and rebirth.
Well, those kinds of maps where it's like these emotional states lead to this type of enlightenment.
Mhm.
To me, that's really a version of what NLP is, where enlightenment is an ability or a flow state or whatever is in the middle. So
Yeah. And there's ways you can guide them with this practice or this lesson. Then you stack that on the next one and the next one and the next one, and it gets you towards this greater awareness or this.
Yes, these attention experiments build so that this thing that's kind of complicated or transformative is easier.
Yeah, we talked about Buddhism a little bit earlier and how there was there were some, there were relationships between awareness in Buddhism and mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah.
Similar to NLP.
Yeah. So
attention experiment.